January 1994, the CEO of SEGA orders a 32-bit cartridge-based console to be out by Christmas 1994. This gives the developers of SEGA just under a year to plan a system, design a system, redesign the system, market the system, produce the system, and then sell the system. What did we get, Gooch?
We got the Sega Saturn.
But before that, we got to the number 5 worst console of all time, the SEGA 32X.
The system launched in November 1994 for North America. This thing sold around 200,000 units and had a launch price of $159. The 32X was originally meant to be an extension to the life of the Sega Genesis.
That's right, Gooch. Sega's initial thought was to make the 32X a separate console that was 32-bit and played cartridges. However, Sega felt alienating the Genesis fanbase would not be right. So, they decided to make the 32X sit on top of the Sega Genesis, while at the same time the Genesis already had underneath it the Sega CD.
Wow, so you have a Sega CD, and then a Genesis on top of that, a 32X on top of that, and then if you stuck a copy of Sonic & Knuckles in your 32X, which was originally a Genesis game, and then you stuck another game inside of Sonic & Knuckles, what would you have?
The biggest mess of wires you have ever seen in your entire life. Remember this, folks, the Genesis had its own power supply. The Sega CD had its own power supply. Guess what, Gooch? The 32X had its own freaking power supply.
How would you plug all of this in? Your television obviously has its own power supply.
You need 4 ports just for the power itself, and all 3 of the Genesis hookups had those big black bulky ass bricks.
Oh man, and let's not forget about the visuals. Now, the 32X had to be linked separately into the Genesis. If you did not link this cable to your Genesis, you would not see the sprites. The 32X also linked separately into your television for its own video output. This means that you could pretty much permanently leave it on your Genesis like a tumor that could never be removed.
Let's go ahead and switch gears and talk about sound. The sound was something that Sega had pumped up from the very beginning, how the sound was going to be on par, if not better, than sound for the Super Nintendo. However, the myth was that the 32X used Q-Sound technology. Everybody remembers Q-Sound from the Sega CD days. It did not use Q-Sound. Instead, sound was routed through 2 PWM sound channels that mixed through the audio lines of the main system's cartridge port. What this means is, the sound sounded like total shit. Now, theoretically, the sound could have sounded just as good as a game from any Super Nintendo game. But, since the system was so hard to program for, the sound never came through like it should have.
Okay, so I get the sound is bad, and it was a pain in the ass to hook up, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the games are bad.
Well, the games weren't that much better. During the lifespan of the 32X, around 34 games came out for the system total, most of them coming out in North America. Now, some of the games, Gooch, weren't that bad. Spider-Man, for instance, was not a bad game. The Knuckles game was not a bad game. But a majority of them you could have just played on a Sega Genesis itself.
Yes, there was really no benefit to playing a lot of these games on the 32X when you compare it to a Super Nintendo or even the regular Genesis. The enhancements were very, very minor.
And when you talk about the sound itself, in some cases the sound was actually worse than other games. Doom, for instance, sounded so much better on the Super Nintendo than it did on the 32X.
Okay, so I understand that 32X games had bad sound, but you can't tell me that games that utilized the 32X and the Sega CD together had bad sound. They had the benefit of having CD quality audio.
That's true, the sound was better, but the gameplay was twice as bad. All these games were just playing full motion video, and every now and then you would hit a button to continue the storyline of the game.
Not very compelling. And also the added benefit that you're pretty much buying games that were already released for the Sega CD before.
Yes, talking about a waste of money. The launch price for the 32X was around $159. After a few months, Sega realized that the 32X was not selling that well, so they dropped it to $100. A few months later went by and the 32X still was not selling, so they dropped it to $19.95, Gooch. $19.95, and the 32X was still not selling that well.
Now, you know you have a bad game system. You know you are worthy to be in the top 10 greatest console systems that have failed, because your system launched with a price of $159, and in less than a year it dropped down to $20 fucking dollars.
And stores were refusing to take them because they were not selling.
Rejected!
On October 5th, 1995, Sega decides to pull the plug on the 32X project, canceling it completely. Gooch, Sega also had some other ideas for the 32X before this had happened. Originally, they were going to make a Sega Genesis 32X hybrid to be a standalone console, just like they had done a few years before with the Sega CD and the Sega Genesis, with the CDX.
We all know how well that went.
So during this 1 year and 1 month time span that they just completely wasted with the 32X, Gooch, they could have spent all their time working on this Sega Saturn.
Yeah, but let's face it, okay? They were working on both systems at the same time. You had Team A on the Saturn putting all their time and effort. Do you really want Team B, the same team that made the 32X? What could that team have been? 2 interns and a mop they pulled from a fucking closet?
So in the end, Sega had the right idea of keeping the fans in mind with making add-ons for the Genesis. But Gooch, as they say,
add-ons don't add up.
I'm the douchebag.
I am the Gooch.
We'll see you next time.